Warner Brother executives have to be panicking over the DCEU now. Everything they've been putting out this last year has been bombing, and I know things have been bad for comic book movies in general in the theaters, but where Marvel actually has had some legs behind it when it first started, DC has been struggling from the get-go, and they've been trying to change things up a bit by bringing in James Gunn, but by doing that, they're creating whole other problems because everything that was in the pipeline before James Gunn's new universe starts up is pretty much a wash right now, and that's where you get things like this. The Flash becomes worst box office flop in superhero movie history. And that's saying quite a bit right now because there's been some bad superhero movies, but they devoted so much money to this. I mean, it needed to make around $700 million just to be considered somewhat of a success. And this movie hasn't even broken $300 million after being in the box office for over a month and a half now. And we got these early projections right now from Blue Beetle, which is actually shockingly low according to comic book resources. It's expected to make 12 to 17 million at the domestic box office in its opening weekend. And this is a movie that probably needs to make around $70 million at the opening box office just to be considered somewhat viable. And it's well below that, even if it was able to exceed the already low expectations. And now we have this with Aquaman. Trouble in Atlantis. DC Studios order multiple reshoots for Aquaman sequel. Now, reshoots for a movie like this isn't necessarily unheard of, but the manner in which the movie is being reshot is something to be discussed right now. According to multiple sources reported by The Hollywood Reporter, there have been around 3 rounds of reshoots in New Zealand since mid-June. That's quite a bit within such a short period of time. In addition to the reshoots and poor test screenings, the shooting schedule was also set back due to the 2020 pandemic. Okay, if I'm going to defend this a little bit, it will say poor test screenings don't necessarily mean a ton right now. I mean, a lot of people say like, oh, poor test screenings mean the movie's going to be bad. No, a lot of times when they have like certain endings or certain scenes, they'll put them in the movie and be like, well, we're not sure with this. Let's actually put it in front of an audience, see what they see. And if the audience says it's bad, then it's like, okay, that kind of confirms what we said. Or if the audience likes it, then it's like, oh, well, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, let's keep that in there. So you can take it with a pinch of salt, but either way, things are not looking good for this movie right now when they're actually trying to like keep scrambling since just a couple months to try to figure out like what they're actually doing with it because they have no plan. And a lot of that comes down to the fact that James Gunn took over and this movie was greenlit or before he actually entered the picture. And the only reason this actually got a sequel is because the prequel to this actually made over $1 billion globally. It wasn't a domestic hit necessarily. I mean, it did fine domestically, but it made a lot of its money globally. And that's what they're making this movie for now, is they expecting domestic audiences have kind of washed their hands of this, but now they're expecting this one maybe can still work. It can help recoup the cost, but I don't think so right now because everything points to bad news right now. One of the problems with the Flash that this doesn't have, though, is the Flash has the main actor was less likable because of his off-screen antics, whereas Jason Momoa is a lot more enjoyable for people, or more people like him. But the problem with this is you still have Amber Heard in the movie, and despite her having a diminished role, she still kind of has a stigma attached to her, and she is still attached to this movie. I know in the marketing they're going to probably try to downplay her involvement with this, but people who know that she's in there still know that she's in it, and they're not going to watch this movie as long as she's there. And with the budget that they're having on this movie, they need to get as many tickets sold as they can, and I think this is ultimately going to hurt them. And now we have James Wan, the director of this, coming out and trying to say like, well, you don't need to see it doesn't need to be a part of the shared universe because the first movie wasn't part of like a team up movie or whatever. But that's beside the point. People watched that because it was following Justice League and people wanted to see more of this character. And knowing that this is pretty much going to be his last movie, then people just aren't as invested anymore. I know James Gunn has kind of been iffy about whether Aquaman or Jason Momoa will continue playing Aquaman. And if he does, it would be a part of James Gunn's universe, and pretty much everything that wasn't a part of his universe will be considered non-canon. So a lot of audience members just aren't necessarily interested in this movie, even if they're interested in seeing the character. But if they don't actually go see this movie now, then they're probably not going to bring him in the future, because why invest in a character that apparently loses them money, even though the loss of money is a result of what they're doing moving forward, if that makes any sense. I really don't think it does. I mean, they're just kind of hurting themselves right now and then blaming the people that they're hurting for their problems right now. So either way, DC is just a mess, and I don't expect a whole lot from them coming forward. I mean, maybe when I start seeing some of the James Gunn stuff, I'll change my mind. I mean, his Suicide Squad, I think, was pretty good, at least way better than what they had before with the studio interference. So maybe there'll be something in the future, but right now things are looking pretty bad. And the best thing they can do is just mitigate their losses. I said that with The Flash. I'm saying it with Aquaman and Blue Beetle. Just release it to their streaming services, what they have, and just try to move on from there, because it costs a lot less to do that than it does to try to market it and distribute it theatrically. Well, let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, make sure you click the like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.